Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Masters Conference virtual webinar series. This is our third presentation for this series on Don't Mind the Gap, Reducing the Communication Gap and Other Legal Operations Obstacles, and it's brought to you today by Agility Blue Software. My name is Marla Moore, and I am one of the directors of the Masters Conference and a legal technology consultant. The Masters Conference is a boutique educational forum where a select group of speakers, vendors, and attendees convene to engage in a proactive collaboration on current challenges within the legal space. We'll be getting started with today's program in just a moment, but before we get started, just a few of those pesky housekeeping details. Today's program is being recorded and will be available on the Masters Conference YouTube channel within the next week. We encourage you to ask questions at any time during the presentation by direct messaging questions -- the Masters Conference in the chat, and your questions will be answered either during or at the end of the presentation. Content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Questions posed by and opinions offered by participants are for the sole purpose of improving our educational value and do not constitute legal advice. The views expressed by the members of the panel belong solely to the panelists themselves and do not represent the views or opinions of their organizations. Remember, there are no bad questions. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation, so please feel free to DM any questions in the chat to questions -- the Masters Conference. Now, onto our program. I would like to introduce Joy Solomon, President of Agility Blue Software, who will be introducing our panelists today. Joy?
Thank you, Marla. Thank you all for coming today. We are very pleased to be sponsoring today's session on mastering the efficiency of e-discovery operations. And today I feel fortunate that we have two very talented and experienced presenters with us, Melissa Weberman and Greg Jordan. Melissa is head of the eData group at Arnold Porter, where she works closely with Arnold Porter's lawyers to tailor strategies and discovery management plans for their clients. Greg is Director of Discovery Operations at Arnold Porter, and he has over 30 years of experience in the litigation support field and brings a really depth of knowledge and a common sense perspective on matter management. So with that background, Greg and Melissa are going to be sharing with us the really innovative approach that Arnold Porter has taken to improving the efficiency of legal operations and improving communications through amongst all of the stakeholders. So with that, Melissa and Greg, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joy. And it's really great to be here. Greg and I have been looking forward to this for a long time and looking forward to sharing this information with you. It's something that we've been working on for years and years, and we feel pretty proud of what we've come up with. So we're so happy to be here. Generally speaking, miscommunications can have a significant impact on legal operations, of course. Right. I mean, with miscommunications, it can lead to mistakes. We can miss deadlines through miscommunication. There can be duplication of tasks. That's a big one. Certainly higher costs because of the duplication of costs and sort of the inefficiencies. And frankly, unhappy clients, right? Nobody likes that. In our opinion, these things can be fixed. So in today's program, what we're going to do is we'll discuss the challenges that we face along the lines that I just sort of outlined, and then the goals that we want to achieve in order to respond to those challenges. In our opinion, we can respond to those by leveraging workflows and technology to improve efficiency, reduce risk, and create an environment where we do more with less. And that's something that we're really proud of at Arnold Porter. We feel like in our eData group, because of this process we've come up with, we are able to do more with less. But before we jump into all of this, we're hoping to just get to know each other a little bit. So first, Joy already gave you a bit of background about me. I was a commercial litigator at Arnold Porter and previously another law firm for years and years. About 2 years ago, I came into my current role, which is lead attorney and managing director of Arnold Porter's eDiscovery and Data Analytics Group. We call it eData. And it's been such a pleasure over the past 2 years to really focus on e-discovery issues and legal operations. What we're going to discuss with you is taking up a good chunk of our time over the past 2 years, and through the technology and processes that we've come up with, we feel like we're able to do so much more with less. I'm about to turn it over to Greg Jordan. One of the great joys of my new position is that I get to work so closely with him. But while we do that, we're going to throw a couple of poll questions out to you so we can have a sense of who you are in the audience. And that way we can sort of tailor what we talk about a bit if we understand a bit better who you are. So please answer the questions. And in the meantime, Greg will introduce himself.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. And thanks, everybody, for attending. As Joymo said, my name is Greg Jordan. I'm the Director of Discovery Operations for Arnold & Porter. And while it is kind of a unique title, you may also think of it as Director of Litigation Support. I've been with Arnold & Porter for 18 years, but have been doing this since the mid-'80s. It's been an interesting stretch of time to see the changes. So our group consists of about 12 folks, kind of running the litigation support eData department for the firm. We have 6 eDiscovery project managers that really take care of the kind of the brunt of the work, the main tasks and projects that come in. My job really is to make sure that that my folks get everything they need to be able to do their job, to operate efficiently, cost effectively, and really with as little stress as possible. This will be a theme that you will see over the next number of slides. And the other big thing is when folks say, well, what do you do? When my son says, what do you do at work? One of the big things that I always say is, I always make sure that there are no surprises. I don't want to have any surprises for anybody in this, whether that's an invoice that somebody wasn't expecting, or an amount of data that somebody needs to review that they weren't expecting. I think surprises are great for, and I forget the saying, surprises are great for birthdays and other things, but in this environment, surprises, no good. So I always make sure there are no surprises. And as I mentioned, I've been in large law firms doing this since the mid-'80s, and there have been lots of changes. So let's take a look at the poll questions and see what we've got here.
So it looks to me like we've got a nice mix here today. It's just about balance between law firms and in-house, with somebody from a vendor here, mostly lawyers. What we're going to describe here, we think, and while we've only applied it in the law firm setting, we actually think would work really well with, frankly, any sorts of complicated processes like making requests for e-discovery and other legal operations work. So we think it would apply actually quite well in-house, and certainly for vendors.
Yep, absolutely. So before we jump in and talk about all of the things that are going to solve all of these problems, let's take a little trip back to litigation support in the '80s. And if my computer works, there we go. So litigation support in the '80s, just as kind of a cultural compass, the '80s, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, mid-'80s, The Goonies, The Karate Kid. Obviously, I like movies. So this was a long time ago. Some of you may be thinking, I haven't even heard of these movies. They were great movies. If you get a chance to see them, they're wonderful. But this is litigation support in the '80s. So we've got the average price of a new car back then, $13,000. Average price of a new home just south of $100,000. Average price of college tuition around $3,000. So this was a while ago. This is also litigation support back in the '80s. I was looking as we were preparing for this and kind of putting these pictures together. I was, I don't know if it's pleasantly surprised, but I found these pictures and the first thing that popped up was the picture on Amazon. So I think you truly can buy anything and everything on Amazon. They still sell these, they're still new, and it is, they're actually quite expensive. So I was very happily surprised to kind of see this. This is also kind of litigation support back in the 80s. So it really wasn't just, bait stamping. It was really kind of the main tasks, I think, in litigation support back in the 80s and 90s were, smaller volumes of hard copy documents that needed stamping and organization. Multiple copies would need to be made for, for particular tasks, where you would collate, you would cron for deposition preparation. Generally straightforward work. The main point is that it didn't require kind of massive amounts of information to track at the task level. So it was, you had a particular task, whether that was copying or collating, and you did it, and it was a fairly straightforward process. So let's now travel to the current and take a look and see what litigation support is in current day. So average price for a new car now, a little more expensive than the $13,000 in the 80s. So 41 grand, average price for a new home, 410,000. Average price of college tuition just north of 10 grand. And litigation support is now this. Relativity, deduping, load files, e-discovery, CAML, metadata, redactions. It's a lot of stuff and very different from what it was in the 80s. So now we're dealing with large numbers of unique interrelated tasks that really require kind of expert project managers and subject matter experts to really help guide teams and firms through all that needs to be done to understand the process. And all of these tasks need to be searched, they need to be tracked, so they need to be accessible, organized, and they really need to be reported on. So in the last 30 years, we went from manually stamping kind of paper documents, collecting and stamping documents, to electronically stamping the documents, and then creating and utilizing software to extract the electronic data out, the metadata, the ability to dedupe, et cetera, and then also developing and utilizing analytics software to quickly tell us what we have. A little more advanced than we were back in the 80s. So while these new processes have been great and have been able to deal with all kinds of stuff coming in the door, they've certainly brought on new challenges as well.
That's right. I mean, as mentioned by Greg, we've seen huge changes in both the volume and type of work that needs to be completed in litigation support departments. And frankly, from my perspective, as somebody who was a lawyer in litigation using litigation support departments to help me, I don't think I appreciated just the disconnect between the people making the requests to do all the things and the people who are actually doing them in the litigation support groups. So what are some of the specific challenges? Well, certainly scheduling difficulties. We're dealing with, in litigation support groups, extremely short deadlines and last minute requests. Frankly, lawyers and others on case teams, I think, don't appreciate just how complex and just how long things take. Tasks simply take longer now due to their complex nature and due to the volume of the documents involved. The deadlines are, let's be honest, never long enough. And there's an increase in the numbers of requests. All tasks from teams generally need to be customized, and legal teams very often don't fully understand exactly what it is that they're asking for. So in order to sort of come up with precisely what they're looking for, the person making the request needs to fully understand it and work very closely with the experts in litigation support to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. We all get to the same place. Also, most project managers and litigation support groups work on multiple matters. Many legal teams feel like their project manager works only on their matter. That's, of course, not true. At our firm, our project managers are working on scores of different matters at the same time. Last minute requests continue to be difficult to juggle, and it increases stress and other competing deadlines. So, you know, a last minute request for one project can throw off the workflows for the 10 other things the project manager has going on. Requests are generally emailed, in my experience. At many times, those emails are rushed, and the emails themselves aren't thoroughly vetted for accuracy. I mean, one of the nice things about emails, of course, is that they're so informal. It's so easy to send them. But when it comes to legal operations and legal support, the casual nature of email is actually sort of the enemy, right? We don't like dealing with sort of imprecise, nebulous concepts with litigation support, because then we might be talking about two radically different things. Legal teams have also grown in size. So because there may be multiple people on a case team involved with any discovery project, this increases the possibility of duplicative requests without legal team coordination. My big thing is the people involved just aren't speaking the same language. The tasks are created with deadlines by people who don't necessarily understand what it is that they're asking for or the time it takes to complete the things they're asking for. Many requests assume that the project manager knows what it is that the legal team has in its head about what they want done. They figure, yeah, the project manager will just figure it out. It's obvious what we want done. And the two different sides, the legal team side and the project management side, they have different backgrounds and they speak different languages, different legal, technical, and litigation support perspectives on what it is we're all trying to accomplish. This increased the risks exponentially, and it's one of the reasons that both parties really need to speak the same language. And then a last issue that pretty significant challenge that we have is matter searching and reporting difficulties. So using email as a task management tool is extremely difficult to search and report on data, either individually by matter or globally across the entire department. And that's what happens if all tasks are sort of siloed in different email folders. Maybe there are many emails that came in order to get on the same page of what the request actually is. All of that lives in discrete places, and it's hard to come up with a comprehensive way to report on that. It's even more difficult to report on historical requests, right? It's one thing for a project manager to synthesize what they've got in their email box from this week, but when you're trying to do it from last year, 5 years ago, it's really hard to sort of put that puzzle together based on email. And the lack of reporting makes it difficult to track activity when you're asking for, say, a new hire. Our group has been growing a lot. We need to be able to track the data in order to figure out, you know, exactly how much do we need to grow. So we're going to put a poll question out to you on what you see as your biggest challenges with litigation support. I suspect that the lawyers on the case teams that are making the requests will have a pretty different view on this than people who actually work in litigation support. As a lawyer who made these requests myself, I think that for me, not speaking the same language and information being sort of siloed in email, those were the two biggies. It was really difficult for me to sort of get on the same page as my litigation support project manager, especially when I'm attempting to do it through email. Sometimes it would take, 5, 8 back and forths before we finally get on the phone and be like, all right, let's just get on the same page. So yeah, email is the enemy, and certainly my sort of not speaking the same technical language as my project manager was also an issue. So I see here that, 80% of the audience agrees that the requesters, the case teams, not speaking the same language as the litigation support group is the issue. I agree. And then 20% of the audience thinks the issue is email. I agree. Reporting, I agree. So I think we're on the same page with all the problems.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of times, in law firms, what happens is the maybe more junior associates are working on the discovery aspects of a particular case, and when they're working with litigation support project managers who have a ton of experience, I think to a degree there's this level of kind of deferring to the project manager because they have so much experience. But at the same time, litigation support is over there going, where's the direction? Why am I not getting, what I need here? So it's kind of that very difficult situation that you're everything's trying to get done in a particular way, but it's when you're speaking the same language, when each side knows how long something is going to take, or the difficulties, or the other particular subtasks that are required, then everybody there's less assumption going on, and then everybody kind of works together. And as Melissa said, less through email kind of back and forth, and more of like, well, let's have a call, let's talk about it, and then we'll kind of all record it in kind of one place and be able to reference it, as needed.
So turning now to the devil that is email when it comes to these sorts of projects. Listen, I love email, and frankly, I put myself in the category of somebody who abuses email. I certainly email things in sort of a one-off way. Sometimes it could be better accomplished by a phone call. I'm certainly, no angel when it comes to email. However, when it comes to litigation support requests, this is one area where I feel certain that email cannot be the answer. Here's why. So email is a standard method of communication. I like it when handling just sort of a routine project. And a lot of times it may seem most efficient to the sender, right? It's really easy to do, and we know that we all use it. However, one routine project will generate at a minimum 8 separate emails. Now, mind you, this takes into account that there's no need for any sort of project clarification, and that the requester has all the project specifics, right? So we're talking about something simple where there are really no questions at all. That generates 8 emails. Email may still seem efficient, sort of looking at this, when your project manager handles 2 projects simultaneously, right? So your project manager has 2 different projects going on. There are 16 emails in order to accomplish your 2 separate tasks for your matter. So next, when we in our group review departmental communication on a macro level, we see how complex and inefficient email communication becomes. Really quickly, routine projects compound to 2,000 emails in the aggregate. What we're seeing here, makes me queasy, but it's actually precisely what happens. When you throw in just a bit of complexity, right? Just a question or 2 on exactly what we're talking about, or perhaps it's a complicated request and it requires some amount of coordination. That number easily jumps into the tens of thousands. So what becomes lost in this sea of emails, beyond everyone's sanity, is the project histories, the details, right? The ability to reconstruct exactly what happened months and years down the road, frankly, even last week, right? Even everyone agreeing, like, yeah, last week, I think we did make this particular request, but it took us half a day to get there. I'm not really sure. I'm going to wade through my emails. Was this the final result? It's incredibly difficult to reconstruct what happened.
So we've talked a bit now about the challenges. So let's kind of go through and hit some of the goals that we've got that will hopefully set us up for success as we kind of move forward. So the very first is it's probably one of the most critical ones, which is scheduling. This, I think, we have found to be kind of the biggest win here is that when you start scheduling, you're starting to reduce the potential for missed deadlines. And if you don't schedule these things and have kind of clear methods for tracking when things need to be done or things are being scheduled accordingly, it's those missed deadlines where not everybody's really happy about that. When you're scheduling, you're also ensuring that everyone is fully utilized. So you know who's working on what here and there. And in that situation, if one of your project managers has some available time, you can see that through the scheduling. And if someone else is completely crushed, they may be able to step in and help. So scheduling certainly helps on that. It leads to fewer mistakes because there's going to be less stress. See, this is my theme through the presentation. Less stress, less risk. It's just better for everybody. One-offs are never going to go away, but if you schedule and are able to really kind of hold legal teams' feet to the fire on this, then for the true one-offs that do come in, you'll have time to be able to jump on and educate along the way to be able to do these. So the second goal, and this is somewhat of a theme here we've talked about as well, is removing email as a matter management tool. Listen, email is great. I would be completely lost in without email for so many things, but as a kind of a tool to manage tasks and matters, etc., it's just terrible. It's horrible. It's difficult to search on, to truly kind of search on if you're trying to do some type of Boolean searching, to organize. If you've ever tried to search your own Gmail, horrific, terrible. And if a project manager who's been working on your case is out of the office for an extended period, and there are a bunch of details that are only maintained within their email, trying to get that information while that person is out of the office is very difficult, if not impossible. So email, very bad. We've talked about this before, but everyone needs to speak the same language. Litigation support and attorneys, they speak a different language. And so this is the opportunity to make sure that everybody is coming together and we're developing a way that all of the stakeholders, from litigation support to the attorneys to anybody working on a particular matter, is kind of speaking the same language to reduce that risk. What does processing mean? What does production mean? What a production format? What are you talking about? Analytics, understanding the deadlines, the work involved. And again, when everybody's kind of in tune on all of this, everybody understands how long something is going to take. So, sending a request for an 8 million page production, with an hour's notice, that's not gonna happen. It's gonna take a little longer than that. So everyone's on the same page. So let's see. The no stress and no risk, that is a big one. Again, I can't kind of detail the importance enough to really keep the stress level down and have everything scheduled. I mean, I think we all know probably in our own personal lives, especially over the last year and a half, what stress can do. And so if we are in a situation where we can reduce that, it just makes everything that we do in life just a lot better. And then the fifth goal is really kind of the ability to be able to report in real time, both on individual matters and then on kind of all matters globally, kind of your stats on projects, on all the different matters, the clients, all the different client matters you have, basically everything. once you have that, there is an incredible amount of power that you have within your department when you know everything that's going on. And the last one is, with all of this, surprises are not impossible, but they are greatly, greatly reduced. So we got another poll.
And I'll say, poll question 1, does your firm or company use a task management platform for litigation support? I think the results are going to be a bit skewed because I know some of our colleagues from Arnold Porter are here. So we, of course, do use the task management platform for litigation support. My sense, though, is they are largely not used outside of Arnold and Porter. And sure enough, right now, it looks like it's 50-50 between using a task management platform for litigation support. I suspect nearly all of the 50% on the yes side is from Arnold and Porter. And then if yes, do case teams make requests directly in the platform versus litigation support inputting request information on behalf of the case team? It looks like it's largely a mixture of both. And I think as a practical matter, it probably works out that way, although you'll see that the ultimate goal, what we think works best, is for the case team, right? The people who actually know what it is that they are looking to accomplish, for them to actually make the request. Certainly in consultation with your project manager, it would be a mistake to not use the expertise of the project manager, but ultimately it's the case team, we believe, that needs to make the request.
And it helps because it kind of forces that you need to learn that language, that everybody needs to speak that same language. And this filling out those forms, you're becoming a stakeholder in this, and it just becomes a better situation.
So how do we achieve these goals? We will speak about it with a bit more specificity. You should all know, by the way, that I included cat pic in all of my decks. So I think this cat is looking quite relaxed, and it is what it feels like to achieve goals. So in order to address the issue, we think that you can achieve many, if not really all, of the goals by doing the following. First, use a standardized and centralized request database. This is a snip of what ours looks like. It's the legal teams that must take an active role in filling out the forms for requests, so it's not filled in by the litigation support group. It's the attorneys and the other members of the case team that are the stakeholders here, right? And so they need to have some skin in the game. It's too easy, I think, sometimes for case teams to sort of pass responsibility for e-discovery projects off to the project manager. We need the case teams to take some ownership of it. And by doing this, by sort of forcing the case teams to do this, they begin to know and speak the language of the project managers. In our experience, this must be backed by firm management. I mean, there's some amount of, I think, culture shock that happens when you attempt to transition from something informal like email to a database like this. I think none of you will be shocked that no one likes to fill out forms, right? It's just one more place that you have to go to and figure out how that works. So it does require the backing of management. Certainly, you need to spend a good amount of time and thought on the design of the database. The ease of use for the user, right, for the case teams is critical in order to get buy-in from the firm. And so for that reason, we spent quite a lot of time before actually rolling it out, even before piloting it, to make sure that we felt like it was very user-friendly. We think a pilot with attorneys and legal assistants in order to get their feedback is really necessary. I mean, they need to be part of the rollout to confirm that it works for them. We had a big successful pilot that we really relied on and made a lot of tweaks based on the feedback that we got. You really need APIs to sync client matter data and to sync login information, right? So having people separately enter in emails and passwords, that's enough of a barrier to entry that people just aren't going to use it. So you need to make it so there's no separate username or password, just make it really easy to use. Centralized storage will assist others in bringing them up to speed. So on both the case team side and also the project manager side, by having this information in one place, others on the case team can take a look and really quickly understand exactly where we are on a particular project. So this becomes the de facto place for people to go to get the most up-to-date information, rather than people sifting through email. Maybe someone wasn't copied on an email they should have been copied on. Here, we know all of it is in one place. And of course, centralized storage assists others in bringing them up to speed. So if you add new people to the case team, or you have a project manager covering for someone else, it's all in one place. And data is just no longer siloed. And that to me has been one of the major issues that we've been able to address by moving to a centralized project management system.
Great, thanks, Melissa. So, so let's spend a few minutes talking about kind of the benefits of having this database kind of management system. You know, as Melissa had said, this becomes the central hub for all kind of project communications. You've removed kind of the email component of it, and now you have all your data in one place, which I have to say we've been using various tools over the years, but our kind of first iteration of tracking all of this information dates back to 2000. So we've got over 20 years of having legal teams fill kind of this information out and using this, and that gives us a lot of capability from an historic standpoint to go back and research what has been done previously. When you have all of this, you can track your projects, you can track the different databases, all the different tasks, the licenses for the different programs that you have. You really start to see the strength when everything is in one place, and you can kind of slice and dice as you need to kind of grab the information that you that you need to get to. What's beautiful also about these systems is that you can have automatic notification system incorporated that keeps all of the stakeholders up to date. For example, if you have a legal team who's putting in a request for a production, and that's being asked for by, let's say, an associate, but that associate wants kind of everyone on the team to know when the production is done, because let's say it's going to be a tight deadline. You can build into the form that when the form is complete, when the task is complete, then an automatic notification will go to the email inbox for everybody that says, this production is complete. Feel free to send it along, do what you need to. It shows the work in progress, and that also assists with scheduling and with work assignments. You can use it as a way to track closed matters. You can assist if you happen to use relativity. You can also use this as a way to track the different workspace assignments, whether that's in cold storage or nearline. And as you'd like, you can also use this tool with customized to use it as a way to track legal holds. It's really almost kind of limitless in what you can do, because it's very easy to kind of build forms and build workflows. But basically, you're getting everything out of the silo of email communications, bringing everything in. And at that point, everybody has kind of the most up-to-date in real time, but they also have the ability to historically find what they need, something that might have taken place 3 years ago, 5 years ago. We get requests all the time to be able to go back and find, what did we produce in 2006? And we have the ability to go back and do that based on client matter and how we tracked everything. So it's a big thing. So on the reporting end, when you have something like this in place, you're able to report on, you can take a quick report and see, how many cases are assigned to a particular project manager. If someone has 25 cases and someone has 4 cases, well, maybe we need to adjust that a bit. But it gives a good indication with very little work to report on, all the different cases that are active and are being worked on. What's active, what's closed from a particular matter, what has been reopened, and the same on the particular tasks themselves. What are, if you want to go back and review closed tasks, if you want to look at all the ones that have been opened, or even the ones that are on hold, all of that can be done in this system very quickly. You would be hard pressed to try to do that with an email and have it be accurate at all. Tracking licenses within this platform can be done as well, which assists in keeping your costs in check. One of the other really nice things here is you can do kind of task analysis reporting. So if you want to see how many productions were created over a given month or by a certain legal team, you can get to that granular detail very quickly by these created custom reports. And if you want to set it up in a way that it's an automated, if you want to know by, every Monday morning what was produced, how many documents were asked to be loaded into this particular tool, what was the data count of how much data was loaded or set aside as being nearlined. All of that can be done and set up and done in an automated way. So you have those reports being generated in the background, and you come in Monday morning or whenever you would like, and you have all of that information available to you, which is just amazing. And again, as I've mentioned, all of this reporting can be done on individual matters, so you can get to very granular details, or you can really start to report on kind of all of the matters globally and start to really see how many cases are that, how many particular separate cases you're working on, separate matters that you're working on, how many people are involved from the legal teams on that. So it tracks everything. It's just the power of this is really quite something. And kind of the additional benefits here is, when you're putting a task in, versus email, someone is, and I think Melissa had alluded to this earlier, it's kind of informal. Someone kind of writes a task, oh, we need to make a production, and you're typing the information out and it's sent. And that's kind of informal. So maybe you have everything right. The requester is asking everything, that everything's set, maybe not. But when you're actually going in and you're filling out kind of a form, a professional form, I think your concentration is up a little bit, because you're going to be held to task on this. If it's wrong, someone's going to come to you and say, we did it the way that you wanted, but that's not right. All right, we need to do it again. It just brings more focus to the person who's actually filling this out. And then it also kind of allows litigation support and the project manager to look at, assess, and then be able to look at the deadline and respond immediately to say, as I alluded to in the previous example, if somebody at 4 o'clock wants an 8 million page production at 5 o'clock, well, that isn't going to happen. So there'll be a conversation, there'll be an adjustment on the task, and then everybody is kind of on the same page. The other huge part of this is just from the kind of what I call production clarity. If you have a very simple production, here's a tag of 18 documents, there are no redaction, there's nothing to do, great. Produce them, start with this Bates number, finish it needs to be in this format, you're done, that's great. As things continue on, rare is it that productions are that simple. And they're usually met with, multiple emails back and forth, trying to get to a final production set. Well, we only want these documents if X, Y, and Z, and then they can only be here for these particular people, but only with these particular terms. And if these are things that are changing, you need to have one place that tracks kind of what is the final aspect of that production. Because if you're asked to go back and try to kind of put Humpty Dumpty together again, it's impossible and it's too risky. So having one place that has all of the details, and this is especially useful if someone needs to make a production and your project manager is on vacation or not available, then another project manager can step in and review all of the particulars and be able to get that done appropriately and on time. So it's just a critical thing to do and can be done very easily with a centralized database program. With productions, you can build in QC tracking modules. So when a project manager has finished, another person can come in and kind of go through the production, tracking that QC production accordingly in that, and identify if there are any issues. And that way a second set of eyes kind of sees what's going on and can sign off on it and be tracked accordingly, that we know that it's going to be right. If you have for example, if you have new software coming into use, or if some of the forms that you're using because of an update to the software, now you need to tweak the forms a little bit to add information, you can do that. And you can do that pretty easily on the back end. One of the things that we tweaked was, and that made, I think, everybody's life a bit easier, is that we put in a kind of a way to favorite frequently used client matter numbers and frequently used people. So when you're filling out a request and you're using kind of the same people, if you're working on a few different matters, you don't have to type in and search. They'll just be at your favorites at the very top. And that it makes it efficient for you. It makes it efficient for us. It's a very nice and easy way, and it's an easy win and easy to do within the platform. And lastly, I think, one of the other big things is that, asking for work to be done usually requires some amount of time, generally some amount of cost. And so before any work is done, this is a great way to be able to review and get project sign off, ensuring that you're kind of following any client requests or client guidelines, you're working with the team, because let's face it, these matters are very complex. They're usually met with a lot of people working on a particular matter, and not every single person can know absolutely everything. So this is a way for us to make sure that, in effect, everybody is on the same page, and that, as I referenced the first slide with no surprises, we're making sure if someone's asking for work to be done on something that might be 1 terabyte in size, that, the client knows, the legal team knows, everybody knows, what is this is going to take and the expectation. So it's a really critical thing on that.
And I'll say that's one piece of this I love. It's incredible with email communications that sometimes something that's really a question might seem like a request, right? And somehow something gets executed on, and the requester is sort of like, I didn't tell you to do that. I was asking whether it was okay to do that, right? That sort of thing happens all the time. Email is imprecise. Of course it happens all the time. If people are forced to be precise and forced to actually say, like, yes, this is a final request and it's been vetted and we're all on the same page, we're in good shape, right? We all agree. And it really just reduces like the mystery of it all. There's, this is e-discovery. There doesn't need to be any mystery. There's enough else going on.
There is enough.
Yeah, so I find that to be really important. But really the key ingredient to all of this is that the case teams must be involved in the process and fill out the task forms to ensure that everybody is speaking the same language. Case team involvement ensures that the actual people who are involved in the substance of the case have a stake in the outcome. So why is it so important that the case teams be involved? Part of it, well, let me take that back. Why is it that these forms sort of force the issue? I think this is the genius behind it. The forms that we use are fairly binary, right? They force the requester to make the actual decisions that need to be made. So they're actually really not difficult to fill out because the questions are quite binary. For most of the requests also, they're pretty perfunctory, pretty easy to do. For the more complicated ones, it's a more complicated request. But again, the requester is forced to use the language that the project manager will understand. This, though, gets to Karen's question in the chat, which I think is a really good one. Karen asks, I'm not a relativity certified administrator. I don't know specifically how to draft a search query in relativity that I personally know will be the right one to get me to what I'm looking for. Do you have any recommendations on how I can communicate better with whoever will be executing on my request? Should I have an expert take a look at what I'm asking? Should I delegate better? I find that even when we're all speaking the same language, it's much more difficult than expected to execute correctly the first time. Yes, I totally agree. It is really hard for a non-technical person to, first of all, execute on a particular search and relativity. You may not be that skilled when it comes to, putting together the various sort of terms and connectors, for example. And frankly, like, that's fine. That's not your job. That's the project manager's job. They are very skilled at putting together those searches, and it's totally fair. And I think really we ought to have them execute on those complicated searches. We, as the lawyers and the other professionals on case teams, are very often thinking about what we need in a sort of conceptual way. And we need that translated into relativity. Who's the translator? Well, very often it is the project manager. And so for something complicated, Karen, like you're suggesting here, or something complicated like a production, you may not be able to go into Agility Blue and make that request yourself flawlessly the first time. It might require meetings and phone calls in order to make the request. It might require work for the PM to do before you can actually make the request. That's fine. I actually prefer, and I love how we have Zoom now. What I used to do pre-production for any case is I would get on some sort of Zoom or WebEx or something, share a screen, and I would have my project manager walk me through each search that got me to, say, a production set, or would walk me through a complicated search and explain to me exactly how it was responsive to what I wanted, what I had sort of conceptually said. And that way I could say to the project manager, actually, no, like I wasn't looking for quite that. I'm looking for this, or I see now that I wasn't specific with the custodian. I need to sort of add that layer in. It's totally fair. And frankly, I think you have to have those communications. Personally, I think they should happen outside of email. I think happening on calls or through Zoom so that you can share your screen, take a look at the searches and relativity to make sure you're on the same page. That's all totally kosher. And in fact, I think sort of like the better way to do it. Once you've done that work and once you're comfortable that you have that sort of tricky search or the tricky production, and you all agree that yes, this is the production search, and I feel confident on the case team that this is the production search, that's when you make the request. That's when you go into Agility Blue and lay out the details of what you want. It would be not good to go into Agility Blue and make that request before you felt confident about the details, because then you might be making the wrong request. And then the project manager is trying to figure out what's going on, maybe executes on it, makes a mistake. You have to have, all the back and forth that you really should have had before you made the request in the form. So from my perspective, I don't think that this teaches legal teams to necessarily better at relativity. That's a separate course for a separate day. What this does is it forces the case team to, before they make the request, know, yes, this is the request that I'm trying to make. I know we're on the same page. I'm going to enter it into the form, and that way the global we will be on the same page. The person who looks at this 5 years down the line, the person who looks at this tomorrow when I'm out on vacation. So I hope, Karen, that sort of answers your question. I don't think that this is on you. I think that this is you collaborating with the experts. Probably a short phone call will do the trick a lot of the time. And once you're on the same page, that's when you make the request.
Yep.
And Greg, from your perspective, I don't know if you have a further gloss on that, but for me, the reason why this is so, speaking the same language is so important, and the reason why these forums do it for us is it forces the legal team to do the critical thinking, to have the conversations they need to have, and it forces them to take their requests a bit more seriously because they know somebody's going to be executing on this.
Yeah, that's right. And I would just reiterate and kind of say that I think having Zooms and discussions to clarify, because there's only so much that I think, email's great for certain things, for this, not so much. Phone calls, and I don't know what I would do without Zoom now, but the ability to quickly get on and work together on something, whether it's a production request or a search, is really critical, because that, as Melissa said, that's where you're starting to learn about the particulars and what it takes to get to the end goal. So no, I agree 100%. Absolutely.
Do we have any other questions? We're getting a lot of nice feedback in the chat. Greg, you can't see it, but people think that we're super helpful. So that's great.
Like that.
But yeah, we have a couple more minutes. If there are any other questions, we'd be happy to talk about it. Okay, well, this has been great. Greg and I always like talking about this. It's sort of been like a labor of love, and we're so proud of what we've accomplished and how much it's helped our group. So I think we'll go ahead and I'm going to put, and Greg, if you're okay, I'll put both of our email addresses in the chat. We'd be really happy to discuss this further offline.
Absolutely.
Talk through your experiences. I mean, we also see this as a continuing sort of conversation. And if you have other experiences, we would be really interested to hear, because, we're constantly still making tweaks to our forms to make sure it's easier to use, or asking all the questions that need to be asked.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both to Melissa and Greg for your presentation today. It was excellent. I personally learned a lot. And we also like to thank Agility Blue for their continued support of the Masters Conference. Melissa will be putting in both her and Greg's email addresses in the chat. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them. If this is a topic that you would like ongoing information on, I'm also going to be putting my Masters Conference email address in there. Please reach out, and after the first of the year, maybe we can have a part 2 if everybody's in agreement.
Love a part 2.
A sequel. Who doesn't love a sequel?
And perfect for Greg because he loves movies.
That's right. Works perfectly.
What you don't want to see is the prequel.
We don't want the prequel. We'll go for the sequel.
No.
And thank you everybody again for joining us today. We all
Thanks,
also
everyone. Bye.
Yeah, hope you have a very happy holidays. I'm trying to get the happy holidays out.
Happy holidays. Bye, everyone.